My name is Sophie Hargrove. I'm 29 years old. 6 weeks ago, the fire department showed up at my door and told me my husband didn't make it out of the building. I remember exactly what I was doing when they knocked. I was folding laundry. I had a pair of his socks in my hand, the gray ones with the little hole near the toe that I kept meaning to throw away but never did. I still haven't thrown them away. The two officers stood on my porch with their hats in their hands, and before either of them said a single word, I already knew. You just know. Something in your body knows before your brain catches up. I sat down on the front steps because my legs stopped working. I didn't even invite them inside. I just sat there on the cold concrete while one of them talked and the other one looked at the ground, and I held those stupid gray socks the whole time. My husband, Caleb, had been a firefighter for 7 years. He loved that job in a way that was hard to explain to people who didn't know him. It wasn't ego or adrenaline, it was just who he was. He used to say that most people spend their whole lives looking for a reason to get out of bed. He already had his. The fire broke out on a Thursday night in a commercial building downtown, an old warehouse that had been converted into apartments. The call came in just after 11. Caleb's crew was the second team on scene. From what they told me afterward, the structure was unstable. Part of the upper floor collapsed inward. 3 firefighters were trapped. 2 made it out. 1 didn't. They told me they recovered remains from the scene. They told me the investigation was ongoing. They told me I was so brave. I wasn't brave. I was just standing there. The weeks that followed are hard to describe without making it sound like something from a movie. And I don't want to do that, because it wasn't cinematic at all. It was just quiet and gray and relentlessly ordinary. The sun kept rising. People kept texting. Casseroles kept appearing on my doorstep from neighbors whose names I barely knew. I kept waking up at 3 a.m. and reaching to his side of the bed before I remembered. That's the part nobody warns you about. The remembering. Every morning, for a few seconds, things are fine. And then you remember. And it hits you the exact same way every single time. My younger sister Bridget stayed with me the first 2 weeks. She slept on the couch, drove me to the funeral home, sat with me through paperwork I couldn't process. Bridget is 4 years younger than me, and she's always been the louder one, the funnier one. But during those weeks, she was just quiet and steady, which is exactly what I needed. She made coffee every morning and left it on the nightstand outside my door without knocking. Small things like that. I don't think I ever told her how much that meant. After Bridget went back home, the house got very quiet. I went back to work after about 3 weeks. I'm an occupational therapist at a rehab center, and honestly, going back was the right call. Being around patients gave me somewhere to put my attention. It didn't fix anything, but it got me out of bed. Then came the day everything changed. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had just gotten home from a shift, still in my scrubs, eating leftover soup at the kitchen counter. My phone buzzed. It was Bridget. She didn't say hello, she just said, "Sophie, I need you to call me right now." I put the spoon down. Bridget is not a dramatic person. When she says something like that, she means it. I called her back immediately. She picked up on the first ring. "Are you sitting down?" she asked. "Yes." "Bridget, you're scaring me. Is Mom okay? Is it Dad?" "Everyone's fine," she said quickly. It's nothing like that." She took a breath. "Okay. I need you to stay calm and just listen to me. You're literally doing the opposite of making me calm right now." I know. I'm sorry." Another pause. "Sophie, I was scrolling through some local news coverage this morning. From a town in western Pennsylvania. There's a community hospital out there that posted something on their Facebook page about 6 weeks ago about an unidentified patient." I set my bowl down. "They said he was found near the wreckage of a vehicle on Route 30, Bridget continued. "Badly injured, no ID, no phone, they couldn't identify him. The post was asking if anyone recognized him from the photo." My heart was doing something strange. "The photo, Sophie?" Her voice cracked slightly. "I need you to look at it. Bridget, just look at it, please." She sent it through while we were still on the phone. I heard the notification and I looked down at the screen and I stopped breathing. The man in the photo was lying in a hospital bed. His face was turned slightly toward the camera. There was a bandage across his forehead and bruising along his jaw. He looked thinner than I remembered, and tired in a way I'd never seen on him before. But it was Caleb. The shape of his nose, the curve of his jaw, the small birthmark just below his left ear that I had kissed 1,000 times. I don't remember what I said to Bridget after that. I think I just made a sound. Whatever it was enough for her to understand. "I know," she said. "I know, I know." I was shaking. The kind of shaking where you can't control it, where your hands just go on their own. "How is this possible?" I said. It wasn't really a question. I wasn't asking anyone specifically. I was just saying words out loud while my brain tried to catch up to what my eyes were seeing. "I don't know," Bridget said, "but we need to find out." The hospital was in a small town called Harwick. I'd never heard of it. I looked it up. It was about 4.5 hours from where I live in Columbus, a small community in the western part of the state. The kind of place with one stoplight and a diner everyone goes to on Sunday mornings. I called the hospital's main number. It rang several times before a woman answered. I explained who I was. My voice was steady, which surprised me, because the rest of me was anything but. "I believe the unidentified patient in your Facebook post from 6 weeks ago might be my husband," I said. "He was reported killed in a structural fire in Columbus. His name is Caleb Hargrove. He's 32 years old. Brown hair, about 6'1". He has my voice slipped for just a second, a small birthmark under his left ear." There was a long pause on the other end. "Can you hold for a moment, please?" I held. 2 minutes passed. Maybe 3. I sat on the kitchen floor. I don't know when I slid down from the counter, but that's where I was. On the tile, knees pulled up, phone pressed to my ear. Then a different voice came on. Calmer, more measured. She introduced herself as a patient care coordinator. "Mrs. Hargrove," she said carefully, "I'm not able to share specific patient information over the phone, but I'd like to ask, does your husband have any identifying physical characteristics? A scar? A tattoo? Anything specific?" "He has a tattoo," I said immediately, "on the inside of his right forearm. It's the coordinates of the lake where we got engaged. He got it done about 2 years ago." Silence. "Mrs. Hargrove," she said. Her voice was very careful now. "I'd like you to come in." I called Bridget back before I even stood up from the floor. She said she was already packing a bag. She drove 3 hours to Columbus that night, picked me up at 7 in the morning, and we made the drive to Harwick together before 9. I don't remember much of that drive. I remember it was overcast. I remember stopping once for gas. I remember Bridget turning the radio off after about 20 minutes because neither of us could focus on it. Mostly I just stared at the road and tried to prepare myself for the possibility that I was wrong. That when we got there I would see a stranger in that bed and feel the grief land on me all over again, fresh and new. The hospital was small. A single-story building on the edge of town with a small parking lot and a few evergreen trees out front. Bridget parked and we sat in the car for a moment. "Whatever happens in there," she said, "I'm right next to you." I nodded. I couldn't say anything. We walked inside. The woman at the front desk had clearly been expecting us. She walked us back through a corridor without asking many questions. I noticed she was walking slowly, which I think was on purpose. Giving me time, we stopped outside a door at the end of the hall. She put her hand briefly on my arm. "He's been responsive," she said quietly. "But there are some things you should know before you go in. He has experienced some significant memory disruption. It's not uncommon after the level of trauma he sustained. He may not." She paused. "He may not recognize you immediately. I want you to be prepared for that." I heard the words. I filed them somewhere in the back of my mind. She opened the door. The room was small and plain. A window on one side, letting in gray morning light. Machines. A chair pulled near the bed. And in the bed, propped up slightly, looking toward the window, Caleb. He was real. He was right there. He looked thinner, and the bruising on his face had yellowed toward healing, and there was a long sutured cut along his hairline. But it was him. It was actually him. Alive, breathing, real. A sound came out of me. I don't know what kind of sound. Something involuntary. He turned his head at the noise. He looked at me, and there was nothing there. Not recognition, not surprise. Just a calm, polite look, the kind you give a stranger. "Hi," he said. I couldn't speak. Bridget put her hand on my back. "Hi," I managed. He watched me for a moment. "Do you know me?" he asked. Not unkindly, just honestly. That question nearly took me apart. "Yes," I said, "I'm your wife." He looked at me for a long time. Something moved behind his eyes. Not recognition exactly, but something. Like a word on the tip of your tongue that won't quite come. "I'm sorry," he said. I'm trying. I don't remember." The doctor came in later and explained it. Severe blunt force trauma to the head. A combination of the structural collapse and the impact afterward. He'd been found unconscious en route 30. They believed he'd somehow made it out of the building before losing consciousness, possibly disoriented from smoke inhalation, and ended up in his truck driving before the effects caught up to him. The truck had gone off the road. No ID. No phone. Just a man who didn't know his own name. His memory, the doctor said, was fragmented. Some things were intact. Language, basic function, general knowledge. But personal memory, autobiographical memory, who he was, where he came from, the people he loved, most of that was gone. "Will it come back?" I asked. The doctor was honest with me. Sometimes it does, sometimes partially, sometimes more fully, over time, with familiar environments and people. We don't know yet. I sat with Caleb for the rest of that afternoon. Bridget waited in the hall, giving us space. He was kind. That was the thing that got me. Even not knowing me, not knowing anything, he was kind. Patient. He listened carefully when I talked. He didn't seem frightened or distressed. He just seemed like a man trying very hard to hold on to threads he couldn't quite reach. I told him small things. I didn't push. I just talked. I told him that we met at a mutual friend's birthday party 7 years ago, and that he spilled a drink on my shoes and apologized for so long that I started laughing and couldn't stop. I told him that we argued for 20 minutes the first time we tried to hang a picture together and then laughed about it for years. I told him that he made terrible pancakes, but he made them every Saturday morning anyway, and I never had the heart to say so. He listened to all of it with a quiet, concentrated expression, like he was searching for something in the words that he couldn't quite find. After that day, things moved quickly in some ways and slowly in others. The hospital confirmed his identity. The fire department was notified. There were calls and paperwork and officials who needed to be involved. Someone, somewhere, had made an error, a terrible, catastrophic error in the chaos of the incident, and Caleb had been listed among the dead when he was not. I won't go into all of it because some of it is still being sorted out. What matters is that he was alive. We transferred him closer to home within the week. A rehabilitation center in Columbus with specialists in neurological recovery. I went every day after work. I'd change out of my scrubs in the car and walk in, and I'd sit with him for a few hours, and then I'd drive home alone. It was its own particular kind of grief those weeks. Because he was there. He was right there. I could see him, talk to him, hold his hand. But when I looked in his eyes, I was still missing something. I was missing the person who knew me. The person who called me by my name when he was half asleep. The person who knew what I meant when I said a thing without finishing the sentence. Some days were harder than others. Some days he seemed close. He'd look at me a certain way and something would flicker and I'd hold my breath. Then it would pass, and he'd smile politely and ask how my day was. There was one moment, maybe 3 weeks in, when he asked me out of nowhere, "Did I used to sing?" I looked at him. "I don't know why I asked that," he said. "Something just, I don't know." "Yes," I said. "My throat was tight. You can't sing well at all, actually. But you did it constantly." He smiled at that, not a polite smile, a real one. "That tracks," he said, and I laughed. And for just a second I forgot everything because that right there was him. The music therapist at the rehab center had been suggesting for weeks that I try bringing in something familiar. Sound, she said, can access memory pathways that verbal cues sometimes can't. She wasn't promising anything. She was just offering a door. I didn't try it for a long time. I was scared. I didn't want to force anything or push too hard or scare him. Mostly, honestly, I was scared for myself. Because there was a specific song and I wasn't sure I could get through it. On a Saturday in November, about 5 weeks into his stay at the rehabilitation center, I brought him outside to the courtyard. It was cold but sunny, the kind of sharp, clean fall day where the light looks different than it does the rest of the year. We sat on a bench near a small garden, brown-edged and quiet this time of year. But there were still a few late asters, purple and stubborn against the frost. For a while, we just sat. Then I took a breath and I started to sing. It was an old Patsy Cline song, She's Got You. It was the most random possible song for it to have been, when you think about it. Caleb had found it on a vinyl record at an estate sale the first summer we were together, and something about it just stuck. We played it constantly that year. He used to sing along completely off-key while he cooked dinner, wooden spoon in hand, very serious expression. My voice wasn't steady. It wasn't trying to be. I kept going anyway. About halfway through the first verse, Caleb went very still. I kept singing. I didn't look at him directly. I looked at the asters. I heard him exhale, a slow, careful breath. And then I heard something else, almost underneath my voice. Quiet and uncertain. But there. He was singing. Just barely, just the melody, no words, but the melody was right. I stopped. He didn't notice at first. He kept going for another second, eyes closed. Then he opened his eyes and looked at me. Something was different. His face had changed, not dramatically, not like a switch flipped, but something had come loose behind his eyes. Something had shifted. Sophie, he said. My whole body went still. He said it again, slower this time, like he was testing the word in his mouth. Like he was finding something he'd set down somewhere and couldn't remember where. Sophie. I was crying before I knew it was happening. Not the controlled kind, the other kind. Hi, I whispered. He looked at me for a long moment. His eyes were wet. I don't have all of it, he said. His voice was careful, like he was moving through something fragile. It's like trying to remember a dream. Most of it's gone, but you. He paused. You're there. I reached over and took his hand. He turned his palm up and held mine back. We stayed there for a long time, long after it got cold, long after the light changed. The two of us on a bench in November, in a quiet courtyard holding on. I don't have a tidy ending to give you. His memory is still coming back in pieces. Some things return with clarity and some things are still blank. We are relearning each other in ways we never expected. Some days it's hard. Some days it's something else entirely. Something I don't have a clean word for. Like discovering a person you already love all over again. What I know is this. 6 weeks ago, I sat on my front porch steps holding a pair of gray socks and I thought my whole life was over. I thought the person who made everything make sense was gone. He wasn't gone. He was in a small town in western Pennsylvania in a bed with no name tag, trying to hold on to threads he couldn't see. And somehow we found our way back to each other. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not the miracle of him surviving, though that still doesn't feel real some days. It's the song. It's the fact that something in him remembered what his mind couldn't hold on to, that whatever love is, it lives somewhere deeper than memory. I don't know what the road ahead looks like, but he's here. He's actually here. That's enough for today. I've thought a lot about what actually saved us. Not the Facebook post. Not the hospital in Harwick. Not even the song, as much as that moment meant to me. What saved us was that Bridget didn't scroll past. That's the thing I keep coming back to. She was going through her morning routine, half awake probably. The way everyone is when they're looking at their phone before the day starts. And something made her stop. She looked twice. She didn't tell herself she was being crazy and keep going. She stopped, and she looked again, and then she picked up the phone and called me. That decision, that one small decision to take it seriously, changed everything. I think about the version of events where she didn't call, where she thought, no, that can't be right, and moved on, where Caleb stayed in that hospital room in a small town in western Pennsylvania with no name and no one coming for him. I don't like thinking about it, but I think about it. There's something in that worth sitting with. We talk a lot about big acts of courage, the dramatic moments, the grand gestures. But most of life doesn't actually happen in those moments. It happens in the small ones. The twice look. The phone call you almost didn't make. The decision to say the thing out loud instead of letting it go. Bridget didn't know she was doing anything heroic. She was just being honest about what she saw. And I think that's its own kind of intelligence. Not the kind you learn in school, the kind that comes from paying attention, from trusting what your gut tells you even when your head wants to dismiss it. From being willing to be wrong in front of someone you love, because the alternative, staying quiet, carries a cost you might not be able to live with later. I wasn't brave through any of this. I want to be clear about that. I cried on my kitchen floor. I sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes before I could walk through a hospital door. There were weeks at the rehab center where I drove home and sat in the car in my driveway because I couldn't face going inside yet. None of that was brave. But I kept going back. Every day I kept going back, and I think that's what resilience actually looks like up close. Not strength, not certainty, just the decision to return, to sit down next to the person again, to tell one more small story, to try the song. Caleb chose things too, even without knowing it, even without his memory. He chose to be kind. He chose to listen. He chose to hold space for something he couldn't name or explain. There was a version of him under all that silence that was still choosing, still reaching towards something he couldn't fully see. I think that's what love is, when you strip away all the easy definitions. It's not a feeling that arrives and stays. It's a direction. It's the way you keep orienting towards someone even when you've lost the map. Sophie kept going back. Caleb kept reaching. And somewhere in the middle, in a courtyard in November with frost on the asters and a Patsy Cline song, neither of them planned to sing that day, they found each other again. That's not luck. That's what happens when two people refuse to stop trying. I can't promise that every story ends this way. I know they don't. But I know what happened in mine. And I know that the things that saved it weren't extraordinary. They were just consistent. They were just honest. They were just two people and one very alert sister who kept showing up. That's what I'll carry forward. Not the miracle of the survival, the practice of the showing up.